John, Anik, and Kenny Florian podcast. John, Anik, and Kenny Florian.
I f***ing love them. I can't get enough of them.
Let's hear that Boston next.
Big jab there from Duffy, and Frank Mir is hurt now. Down goes Duffy out cold. Frank Mir does it again. Rock'em sock'em robots here. Oh my goodness.
Hyperbole. There are a couple of absolutely self-involved bullshit artists.
Here are your hosts, John, Anik, and Kenny Florian.
Next shot.
Oh, let's fucking go. Back to swearing here in the United States of America. It is Monday, June 24th. The year is 2024. It's episode 495 of the Anik and Florian podcast, starring three-time UFC title challenger Kenny Florian, repping his hometown New England Patriots today. It's good to see you, my friend. How we doing?
I'm doing well, man. Yo, Saudi, we outie. How you doing, dude? How was that flight?
It was a long one, 1425 from Doha, Qatar to Seattle, Washington. And we came straight to Las Vegas. We are here in the penthouse at the Virgin Hotel. Big Ron Pellegrino, Big Ron Betts is going to come say hello to you fine people here in a minute. But yeah. I missed my son's 6th birthday yesterday. I came straight here. Here's Big Ron. Here's Big Ron.
He's back. He's back. Hey, listen, can they hear me?
Yeah, they can hear you.
Listen, I know that DC's a two-time division weight champ, but Big Ron's got the triple X now.
That's right, yeah.
Sorry, DC. Hanging up to him this week.
Yeah, DC gonna.
Sure.
Thank you, buddy. DC going to be with us here at the Virgin. And yes, we are wearing the Frankie Edgar Iron Army t-shirt, as Frankie will go into the UFC Hall of Fame this Thursday. And that is part of the impetus for me missing my son's 6th birthday. Sorry, Houston, Hunter, whatever your name is. But I came straight here because the Hall of Fame is a huge initiative, and it's coming up Thursday. It's International Fight Week 2024, so we're here at the penthouse. All things considered, I'm feeling pretty good. It was a festive show in Saudi. I thought visually, as I watched some of it back, it looked great, so we're going to get into all of that. Ken Flo, though, is coming to Las Vegas this weekend, if I'm not mistaken. We have an appearance on Friday with Cuervo at Tom's Watch Bar at New York, New York. So if you are making the trek to Las Vegas, please come say hello to us, and maybe Kenny will actually put somebody in a rear naked choke if that's your fancy as well. But a lot to get to today. We'll recap UFC Fight Night, Whittaker versus Al-Sheikh. We will talk to Ray Longo. If Instagram is to believe, his team went 4-0 over the weekend. We'll see if he can remember any of his fighters' names as he recounts what happened. But we've got a lot to get to on Robert Whittaker's performance. We'll talk to Ray about UFC 303. And then coming up midweek, all hands on deck, full preview with predictions for UFC 303, Pereira versus Prochazka. By the way, in terms of Alex Pereira, Ken Flo, real quick, I was with Dan Helly over the weekend, and he was talking about you and living in Brazil and how you speak Brazilian Portuguese, and he was wondering why on the Anik and Florian podcast, he's one of our dedicated listeners, why you don't roll the R and you say Alex Pereira. And let us all be clear, drop the fucking H, not now, but right now. It's Alex Pereira, you roll the R, or Alex Pereira, but he was wondering why you, as someone who speaks Brazilian Portuguese, more often than not, when you say Pereira, you say Pereira and don't roll the R.
Good question. So I guess I could, right? Alex Pereira, but I don't know. I guess I anglicize it, you know. Sometimes it sounds pretentious. We always talk. I always joke about, you know, people who say croissant and, you know, taco, you know, they just say it the way it is, you know. So I anglicize a little bit, but you can certainly do that. Absolutely, Dan. I will do that from here on out. If you
so Cody wrote in the chat that you don't like to flex on him like that, and you are too modest. You're nothing if not a beacon of humility. But no, it's having me think about it a little bit, right? Yeah. Because I don't know. It comes naturally to me. Like I found myself this weekend being like shot a bullet, rolling the R. And dude, what are you doing? It's Shara Bullet. You know, you can't just roll the R on a Russian name because you like the way it sounds. So we're not trying to sound pretentious, but let us get into Robert Whittaker's brilliance. Headlines is brought to you by Cuervo. Now's a good time to enjoy the tequila that invented tequila. What else can you say about Robert Whittaker, Ken Flo? Those salivating at that minus 130 betting line, money line next to his name, cash those tickets. He gets Ikram Al-Sheikh out of there with a knockout at 149 of round one. And my gosh, I mean, shades of the Matrix a little bit. It seemed like the sport slowed down for Robert Whittaker. A beautiful uppercut to punctuate Kenny, and just a tremendous win in a career full of them for one of the more beloved guys on the roster.
That's my boy. He's wicked smart. Yeah, I mean, it's the feints. You have to look similar to tennis. The winning shot, that last shot, isn't necessarily the winning shot. For me, the winning move was the feints. He threw some feints the way of Al-Sheikh. Al-Sheikh was throwing himself off base, kind of leaning back, showing that he wanted to throw that left kick. And Robert Whittaker, being the intelligent guy that he is, he goes, okay, check. Let me make sure that's going to be the response. Did it one more time, sold it, and it's like, okay, now I know exactly what I'm going to do. I'm going to hit you with the right hand. It was the right hand that started. So the feints that started it allowed the right hand to land. And then it was the kill shot of the uppercut that ended up putting Al-Sheikh out or almost out and winning the fight for him. Just beautiful stuff from Robert Whittaker. This is why you can't bet against experience. Robert Whittaker has been there and done that in some really big fights. Still has made mistakes, but one thing you can be sure of, Whittaker is going to learn from those mistakes and be better for it. That's exactly what we've been seeing since that setback against Dricus du Plessis. And he's getting better, man. He's getting better. And watch out for anybody that has to face him in the future.
There's so much value for Team Whittaker that can be extracted from this win. I wanted to ask you about the change of opponent. He was to face Khamzat Chimaev as a plus 200 or so betting underdog, and then he draws Ikram Al-Sheikh. And Whittaker in our fighter meeting thought that this might actually be a harder fight. And who knows how the Chimaev-Whittaker fight would have gone or would go in the future, right? But to have dealt with that circumstance, as Robert Whittaker did, and then to produce this result, I just think that's a big part of the value for him moving forward, right? It's one thing to say you're the anywhere, anytime, anyone type of guy, but to really do it and sort of save the day, so to speak, and then have that type of result, the dude's got to be flying high on confidence, I would think.
Absolutely. You know, I don't have the details like you do about why Whittaker said that Al-Sheikh may be the more difficult fight. But for me, if I'm looking at it, I could agree with that based on the fact that when you don't know what to expect, that is the more difficult thing. When you don't know exactly what you're dealing with, that is where it can be tricky because there wasn't a whole lot of information on Al-Sheikh. Similar to when Chimaev came into the UFC, there wasn't a whole lot on him those first two fights. All we were seeing him was starching guys left and right. It's like 30 seconds in the octagon, minute and a half in the octagon. How good is he? Well, he is very good. And now we have a lot more footage on Chimaev to prepare for, right? You're looking at this, you know what to expect. Al-Sheikh, you just don't know exactly how good he is. It turns out he wasn't as sharp of a striker, perhaps not as dangerous of striker as Chimaev. Whittaker just too good there. But I agree with you, man. And that's why a lot of people don't take fights. It's like, I have nothing to gain from this guy. Also, I don't really know how good this guy is. It didn't matter. Whittaker is an absolute stud. What a performance.
So here are some of the quotes from the fighter meeting. First of all, in terms of the Paulo Costa win for Robert Whittaker at UFC 298, he said he was happy that the changes he made after the Dricus du Plessis fight came into play in that fight. In terms of the Al-Sheikh fight, Kenny, being harder than the Chimaev fight, he did say perhaps a harder matchup. He had developed his offensive game plan for Chimaev. He wasn't married to it. Says they're never married to it, but just these are some of the quotes. Holistically, mentally, Robert Whittaker just much better than he was when he first struck interim gold back in 2017. Still feeling all the nerves and all the vibes, enjoying the work and training, perfecting my craft. Just loves the way of life, the combat life, and just a tremendous, tremendous athlete, and really on that level of a Dustin Poirier in terms of just how beloved he is by the fan base. Plenty more on Robert Whittaker in a minute, Kenny. I just want to ask you about Ikram Al-Sheikh, who had been in Las Vegas, who had begun a weight cut and then travels to Saudi Arabia and has another weight cut. I still believe in Ikram Al-Sheikh, and I'm not making an excuse in terms of why his chin didn't hold up. I mean, I think this result would have happened whether or not he had cut weight twice. But gosh, man, like he asked a lot of himself over these 10 days. And I guess it's hard for me to sort of ask you, like, to what extent do you still believe in Ikram Al-Sheikh as future middleweight contender? But, how much are we leaning into this result on the defeated fighter's side?
Well, I still think we need more information on exactly how good he is. We still didn't see a whole lot from him in that loss against Robert Whittaker. His only other loss, of course, coming to Chimaev a little bit ago. Has looked great in the UFC up until that point, and there's no shame in losing to a guy like Robert Whittaker. Losing to a guy with that set of skills, with that amount of experience, being a former champion, there's no shame in that at all. I think similar to how Whittaker came back a couple fights ago from Dricus du Plessis, I think we'll see a much better Al-Sheikh. So long as he's looking at his mistakes, he's not making excuses, and he goes, I need to get better technically. That, at the end of the day, is what you got to do. Combat, fighting is a truth teller. You have to look for those beautiful truths, practice it, and get better. And I think we'll see a better Al-Sheikh because of it. Yeah, and to have that level of experience, to fight someone like Whittaker in your third fight in the UFC, you're going to learn some things. I was certainly thrown into the fire very early in my UFC career. It forces you to get better, and I think that's what's going to happen for Ikram Al-Sheikh.
So why was the betting line so short on Robert Whittaker? I know you and I sort of wondered that privately, and I think maybe we came to a couple of conclusions. Certainly, Al-Sheikh's body of work in the UFC, while short, was very good, right? But part of it also was Robert Whittaker's potential susceptibility to getting knocked out because of maybe the Dricus du Plessis result, which wasn't all that long ago, right?
Yes.
But I can't think of any other reason, with total respect to Al-Sheikh and his team. Robert Whittaker was the one who had been in Saudi Arabia, right, in a training camp for that date. Why is he minus 130 against this guy, Kenny, and not minus 260? I'm serious.
I think that people got really excited about Al-Sheikh just starching guys really easily. And of course, Chimaev saying that was the most difficult fight of his career. All those things sounded really good, and it looked like he wasn't challenged in the UFC. So I think having that hot start is probably the reason for that. And of course, we didn't really even get a chance to see his high level wrestling. And people are like, no, this guy can wrestle at a high level as well. So then you put those things together, the quick knockouts, the wrestling ability, the fact that he's, from Dagestan and the history of all the great wrestlers over there. And they go, well, I think this fight is a lot closer than people think, but it was not.
It's going to be tricky from a matchmaking standpoint for Ikram Al-Sheikh because he was unranked coming in. And here's a guy who has had canceled fights against Paulo Costa in the rankings, Nassourdini Mavov in the top 4, right? So now for one of those bigger names or ranked guys to give an unranked, dangerous Ikram Al-Sheikh a fight, it's a tricky proposition, right? Maybe one of those guys in the bottom half of that, top 15, Jack Hermanson, Roman Dolidze, Caio Borralho. What a fucking fun name to say that is. Michel Pereira, right? Anthony Fluffy Hernandez.
Yes.
You could do worse than a main event with Anthony Fluffy Hernandez and Ikram Al-Sheikh, and that was a fight that was actually put together prior. But it's about Robert Whittaker, Ken Flo, and as we spin it forward in this middleweight division, you'll have Dricus du Plessis in defense of his title against Israel Adesanya in Perth, Western Australia. God help me, metal tube, wheels up. I don't want to think about that right now, but Robert Whittaker certainly said he would weigh in as the backup. He has said repeatedly that he owes Perth a fight. Twice he has been scheduled to fight there, and not because of anything he's done, right? Other fighters have fallen off. But Sean Strickland factors prominently in this equation, and Sean Strickland's the number 1 contender. Robert Whittaker is ranked number 3 in the world, and as far as I'm concerned, they have both earned a title fight. Strickland, to be sure. I'm not going to go down that path again. No. So it does seem like a co-main event and a true eliminator between Sean Strickland and Robert Whittaker right underneath Adesanya and du Plessis would just be unbelievable, and you'd have this mini middleweight tournament. But if I'm Sean Strickland and his management team, I'm not doing that.
Yeah, man. I mean, gosh, John, you're always trying to bring these questions.
You can say no comment.
Oh, my gosh. Well, listen, that would be an insane fight, dude. I mean, that's how you stack a card. However, I think from a promotional standpoint, the UFC likes the fact that they have 2 amazing options here. And if I'm being honest, I think Sean Strickland is in the driver's seat right now because if Dricus wins, Strickland's still a factor of getting that shot, right? Based on the rematch and their close fight. But Whittaker is as well. Now, if Adesanya wins, based on the history of Adesanya and Whittaker does not get that rematch. It's going to be Sean Strickland. So Strickland, right, wins, I guess, the odds of getting that next shot as of right now. Do you make that fight happen? Man, it's an amazing fight. But from a promotional standpoint, I'm not sure that makes a lot of sense because you almost don't want to take out one of those options.
Right.
But man, what a fight. You got me thinking there, Johnny.
No, it'd be incredible. And Strickland and Robert Whittaker both make a lot of money. And perhaps Robert Whittaker even was able to make more money because he accepted this Ikram Aliskerov fight.
Yep.
But just what a great way to close the UFC's first show in Saudi Arabia. As most of you know, it was a little bit of a deliberate start with the prelims, and there weren't a lot of finishes, and everything just came on so strong. The crowd, the live event, the athletes, it was a crazy scene by the end of the main card. So congratulations to Robert Whittaker. Maybe the guy who now deserves to be known as your favorite fighter's favorite fighter. All right. Heavyweight co-main event, Ken Flo. This was interesting. My goodness. Alexander Volkov over Sergey Pavlovich by unanimous decision, but gosh, it's almost more about like what happened outside of competition. Our fighter meetings were absolutely fascinating.
Oof.
Now, these guys were never friends per se, but they were acquaintances. They trained together extensively, depending on whom you ask, over 3 years if you ask Volkov, or 1 year if you ask Pavlovich. And they still haven't now buried the hatchet. If you saw this, they got into it at the ceremonial weigh-in. I kind of take Volkov at his word here. Like, I truly believe that he didn't want to accept this fight. He was supposed to fight Jailton Almeida June 1st, and then they asked him to take this fight against a guy who he trained with for years, Kenny. He said he was really the kingpin of Pavlovich's preparation for Derek Lewis. He was omnipresent in that camp, giving him all sorts of advice. So it appeared to me, and maybe there was a little bit of poker face going on from Pavlovich, but it appeared to me that Volkov really had a hard time with this, but accepted the challenge and performed really well.
Yeah, it's a tricky situation to be in, man. I'm so glad. I experienced a little of that coming off The Ultimate Fighter, fighting Alex Karalexis and things like that. But yeah, it's not a great situation to have to fight an acquaintance, fight a friend. These are difficult things. And for Volkov, though, I'm sure it served him well. I mean, knowing that style, knowing how dangerous Pavlovich is, you could tell as soon as that fight started, he just seemed like he was at home, man. He seemed like he was extremely comfortable. And once that jab was pumping in the manner that it was, when his feet were moving, he just looked like he was at home. Like, this is not going to go the way of Pavlovich. Yeah. If it didn't go, if Pavlovich wasn't landing hard shots in round 1, it wasn't going to happen in rounds 2 and 3. And I thought that Volkov just fought a beautiful fight. You talked about it before we made our picks about how this guy has been dedicated to the game. I talked about how he really has made vast improvements with his grappling. Well, he's getting more technical and he's getting smarter as a striker as well. And watch out for this guy. Yeah. Nobody wants to face a guy that tall. Now, if you have skills, you have power, you have technique, and you're getting better as a fighter, and now you have another element of surprise with your ground game, watch out. Volkov is a damn problem, and he made Pavlovich look really very ordinary and very average, which not a lot of people can do besides Aspinall.
Yeah, I'm really happy for Volkov, one of my favorite fighters on the roster, and I certainly wouldn't have said that a few years ago, but when I think about him having a compromised training camp with no wrestling training partners for the Curtis Blades fight and still accepting it, he has been the consummate company man, and now he gets through this unique challenge against a friend / acquaintance or whatever you want to call him. He's won 4 consecutive fights. The division is sort of in a funky spot, but you can certainly do worse than having Alexander Volkov in a championship setting. It's hard to string together 4 straight wins in the heavyweight division. There was a facial fracture for Sergey Pavlovich. I hope I'm not speaking out of turn, but he did, suffer some sort of facial fracture there. Now, in terms of Alexander Volkov's knowledge of the danger, right? Like, we had heard rumblings that, Pavlovich's power was really heard from in their training sessions. And one of the points that you made off the top of our analysis of this fight was that you could just tell that he was acutely aware of the consequences of getting hit by a strike from Pavlovich and proceeded accordingly. And obviously all of those repetitions in training paid dividends for Volkov. And once this matchup happened under the lights.
Definitely. It's one thing to know that. It's another thing to execute it in the manner that Volkov was able to do that. And I don't know, man. He just looked really masterful out there, really technical, really composed. And he just continues to impress, man. And as you said, 4 fight win streak is not easy to do in the UFC, let alone in the heavyweight division with all the chaos and all the power and all the different styles in that division. So he really is positioning himself really well to maybe get a shot at the belt. Maybe not the end of the year, but maybe early next year. So it's exciting for him now.
He's got 2 sons. I believe he's moved his whole family to Las Vegas. First fighter in UFC history to have his hair combed between rounds. But congratulations to Alexander Volkov, and really just a thoughtful fighter meeting. And hopefully our listeners and viewers don't think I'm going too long on this, but Kenny, even just invoking June 22nd, 1941, when Germany invaded the Soviet Union, and how fighting on that date was not lost on him. I just was borderline blown away by our fighter meeting from Alexander Volkov. And I really like Sergey Pavlovich as well. He did the whole training camp in Moscow. And, I feel like maybe he had a harder time with this matchup than he was letting on. I don't know if you saw him push Alexander Volkov after the fact, but certainly I feel like if one guy was willing to sort of move on and embrace after the fact, it was going to be Volkov, and Pavlovich wasn't having it.
Yeah, I mean, getting injured in that manner, I think didn't help. He's just pissed. That was a very big fight. There's still a lot of opportunity in that UFC heavyweight division, and that was a setback for him, man.
All right, so John Jones and Stipe Miocic, are they gonna fight? Maybe it'll be November at Madison Square Garden. Maybe it'll be December. Tom Aspinall and Curtis Blades are going to settle some interim heavyweight championship business July 27th. Ciryl Gane is the number 2 ranked contender. Jailton Almeida seems to be pining for a fight with him. Certainly, Sergey Pavlovich now is going to take a step back. Volkov moves into the top 3. You could do Gane and Pavlovich potentially in Paris. But, Volkov has always been the company man. Ciryl Gane has gotten a lot of championship opportunities. I do wonder if anybody on the Volkov side would be advising him to bide his time and wait for a championship opportunity. I don't know, but Volkov is a man who deserves to be congratulated. He's done everything the right way. He's like 38-10, right? And while he's won major championships, I think Bellator heavyweight Grand Prix and things like that, it's the UFC gold he's after, and he's not too far from it. All right. Let us get to Kelvin Gastelum and D-Rod Daniel Rodriguez. And again, an opportunity for me to peel back the curtain when it comes to the fighter meetings. We sit down with D-Rod on Thursday when he has essentially just ingested the news as he's 178 pounds, Kenny, right? After a 13-week training camp, some of which was spent in Thailand, gets the news that Kelvin Gastelum is probably not even going to be able to make 180. So the fight's going to be at 185 pounds. And we later find out after the fact that Daniel Rodriguez lost, but he won because maybe he got a new contract and promotionally, he stepped up for them. But we sat down with him in a moment where no new contract, no new money, wasn't necessarily getting 30% of Kelvin Gastelum's purse or anything like that. And it changed the core of the matchup that he eventually lost. So it's tough, man. Like D-Rod, father of 5 in Saudi Arabia, right? You're going to take the fight. But, I really felt for D-Rod, and it ends up being a red stripe on the Wikipedia page nonetheless. Any thoughts on everything that transpired between those two?
That's a tough one. I'm friends with Kelvin. Kelvin is such a nice guy, man. And, I know he felt really bad about that. However, if I'm putting myself into D-Rod's shoes, I am pissed about that. I am extremely pissed because you expect more from a guy like Kelvin Gastelum, who has been in the UFC for a long time now. He's missed weight before. This isn't like a new thing. He has
a missing weight with Kelvin Gastelum segment on his YouTube channel, I believe.
Yeah, that's not a great thing. And it, as far as we know, this has nothing to do with some kind of known injury or whatever. To me, it comes off as, laziness, unfortunately. And I know Kelvin can do better. And this is not the way to impress the UFC brass. This is not the way to impress the other people in your division. And when you're kind of nearing the end of your career, these are misses that you cannot falter on. And it's just unfortunate. It's unfortunate for everybody. But, for D-Rod, it's like he's gonna say, okay, I'm going to take this fight. I'm all the way here. I prepared for this. And now he's got an L, a permanent L on his record because, he prepared and his opponent did. And it's really tough. I hope that Kelvin's able to get things back in order, and he better hope that the UFC kind of doesn't take it out on him and say, you know what, we're good. We got plenty of other welterweights that are willing to make the weight, and hopefully this doesn't come back to bite him, because I do like Kelvin. I think he's an exciting fighter, and obviously has a history in the UFC. He's a name, and yeah, this was not a great result. Yeah.
And it's a tricky thing, right? I'm not necessarily paid to be critical or analytical per se by the UFC, and I hope I can preserve my friendship with Kelvin Gastelum after the Anik and Florian podcast today. But I would encourage people to see what Michael Bisping and Michael Chiesa had to say about this if you don't want to hear what I have to say about it, because this is a guy who weighed in for a Tyron Woodley fight in 2015 at like 180 pounds. And even though he intimated that there were some training camp obstacles and staph infection, he was in Saudi Arabia way before D-Rod. He was there for 2 weeks, and I don't even care to talk about the fight itself, really. I don't know. It just left a really bad taste in my mouth. And I think thankfully UFC CEO Dana White came out after the fact and sort of said how disappointed he was. I just don't know what you do with Kelvin Gastelum at this point in time. I don't know that you give him a welterweight contract, right? And certainly he had the nasty mouth injury, and I do take him at his word when it comes to the staff, but it's like, I don't know, man. I just felt so badly for D-Rod. And even though D-Rod maybe has some things that he can hang his hat on in terms of maybe a new contract and, some deeper appreciation from the UFC, bro, right? Like Kenny Florian doesn't fuck around with red stripes on his Wikipedia page, right? Like this is an MMA loss. Like you ain't trying to have 6, 7, 10 of those.
Yeah, well, it means a lot, right? I mean, these are opportunities lost, potentially, bigger fights, fight night main events, what have you, and beating a guy like Kelvin Gastelum is a big deal. It's still a big deal. And I'm sure D-Rod was dead set on doing it at 170 pounds. That's what he prepared for. That's what he worked his ass off for. And I didn't know that about Kelvin Gastelum in regards to the staph infection. That can complicate things, both because you can't train the way you used to, and also because of antibiotics. You can retain water and things like that. But still,
so maybe reach out to the UFC at that point in time, and
right?
See if you can. The UFC largely is anti-catch weight, right?
Yeah. But say something ahead of time. I get you, right?
Yeah,
right. No, I'm with you.
Like D-Rod had, I think, lost 2 in a row, and now he's lost 3 in a row. And now all of a sudden, I'm not suggesting he's staring at a must win. I mean, I think we've seen guys with 5 and 6 fight losing streaks in the UFC, but I don't know. I just felt like D-Rod was in a really good place and did everything the right way and just kind of got hosed. But nonetheless, Gastelum did enough to win. And even if you are of the belief that Gastelum maybe in this situation, if you think of it as a weight miss, should be docked a point at the start of the fight, he still would have won the fight on points. He won 30-27 on 2 of the 3 judges' scorecards. But it'll be interesting to see how they proceed with KG after that. All right, let us get to the light heavyweights, Volkan Oezdemir and Johnny Walker, if we could. I know you and Brian Petrie were decidedly split on this. Dude, how about Volkan Oezdemir? Another guy who does everything seemingly the right way. Work ethic leads the league and gets Johnny Walker out of there rather viciously at 228 around 1.
I mean, I'm not sure I've seen him look better. I mean, that was nasty. Oezdemir. I mean, my goodness. He just looked sharp. He looked sharp. It seemed like, he wasn't trying to throw a whole lot of volume, but when he was throwing, he was landing. He was precise. He was surgical. And he got a finish over a very dangerous guy in Johnny Walker, a huge guy in Johnny Walker. Now, Johnny Walker doesn't come into the fight game without his faults. He gets sloppy. He sticks his chin up in the air. His hands will go a little bit low, but he's a big dude who can knock you out in a variety of ways. You have to be careful. And Oezdemir just did everything perfectly, from his patience to his composure to when he actually needed to put his foot on the gas. Man, just nasty stuff. That last shot at the end, dude, like where Walker's basically kind of out, trying to sit up.
Yeah.
And that last shot just putting him stiff there on the stretcher. Just nasty, dude. Nasty.
Just another really good guy who is so committed to the ultimate goal. And I think sometimes pundits and fans will sort of scoff when guys who are number 9 in the world talk about the light heavyweight championship. But rest assured, like, Volkan Oezdemir is not here to fuck around. And that's a huge win for him. It's tough for Johnny Walker and a little bit tough for me, right? I call the fight and I say, I think the verb I used was like stretchered, right? Like Volkan Oezdemir stretchers Johnny Walker. And then an hour later, I find myself greeting Johnny Walker at the airport, and I just don't know what to say, But thankfully, Johnny Walker was able to get out of there. I think other fighters were going to have, like Jared Gordon, some really swollen, hard flights. And we'll get to him in a minute. But real quickly, in terms of Volkan Oezdemir in this light heavyweight division, thankfully for Volkan, and we brought this up in our fighter meeting, you have a champion in Alex Pereira who is going to keep spinning it around. He's fighting Yuri Prochazka here in a few days and defending the belt here twice in a span of 3 months. And I don't expect, if Pereira or Prochazka wins, for them to be idling and not defending the belt. Magomed Ankalaev, of course, was with us in Saudi Arabia. There are other guys, Jamal Hill, Jan Blachowicz, Alexander Rakic, and others who are ranked above Volkan Oezdemir. But I mean, he mentioned Jan Blachowicz, right? Like, how competitive do you think Volkan Oezdemir is against Jan Blachowicz and the guys that are just below Alex Pereira and Yuri right now?
I think it would be very competitive. I think that Volkan is a completely different fighter than what we've seen him just a few years ago. We forget that, similar to Aliskerov, he came into this game starching guys, got a pretty quick opportunity against Daniel Cormier for the belt, didn't go his way, and then kind of had this kind of roller coaster ride a little bit up into the last few fights where he's found a little bit more consistency. His skill set is significantly better. He's much more of a grappler than he was. There's way more ways for him to win, and I think he's got a great shot at beating a guy like a Jan Blachowicz. Blachowicz, of course, extremely dangerous, good everywhere as well. But this is a different Oezdemir who's fighting very intelligently, very defensively sound, much more defensively sound than he was in the past. And again, he's got the takedown game now. He can do things from that top position. He can get back to his feet. So that might be the fight. I like it.
And my favorite part about him is he punted on whatever hair replacement thing he was doing back to the shaved head. Like, what are we doing here, Volkan? Take it from Dustin Poirier and me. All business, fellas. Shave your fucking heads. All right, UFC 303 is nearly upon us, and there are some banging fights happening here in Vegas. You can jump in on all the action at DraftKings Sportsbook, the official sports betting partner of UFC. And so many of these matchups are just fascinating. Pretty close on paper as well. How about the co-main event? Diego Lopez slightly favored against Brian T. City Ortega. It's one of several amazing fights. And speaking of amazing, if you're new to DraftKings, check this out. New customers bet just $5, get $150 in bonus bets instantly. All you need to do, download the DraftKings Sportsbook app. Not now, but right now, use code AFPOD. That's code AFPOD for new customers to get $150 in bonus bets when you bet just $5. Get that big fight feel. DraftKings, the crown is yours. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Or in West Virginia, visit 1-800-GAMBLER.net. In New York, 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY. In Connecticut, help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org. Please play responsibly. On behalf of Boot Hill Casino and Resort in Kansas, 21 plus, age varies by jurisdiction. Bonus bets expire 168 hours after issuance. Deposit and eligibility restrictions apply. See terms, eligibility, and responsible gaming resources at dkng.co/MMA. I can't read that any faster, really. We're live, so we can't speed it up. Had to read it fast because the star of the program, Raymond Peter Longo, now joins us. Look live out there.
Where are we? Where the hell are we?
I'm in the penthouse in Las Vegas. Ken Flo's in a really ritzy community in Charlotte, North Carolina, where I think a bunch of famous football players live. Your shot looks terrible. Where are you?
I'm stuck in the dump that I'm in. All right, let me try moving this. Hold on.
No, where are you? Where are you?
I'm at the gym.
Okay.
Yeah.
I thought that was your aura behind you.
Hold on a second. Let me see something. How's that? Better?
Hey, there we go.
Yeah, that's better. That's better.
A little better, no?
Yeah.
Ray Longo Minute every week on the Anik and Florian podcast starring Raymond Peter Longo. Everybody loves Raymond. Congratulations on a big weekend for the squad, brother.
Yeah, we had a great weekend, man. Everybody won and everybody finished their fights. The Amis did great.
That's awesome.
Yeah, little Tom Fitzsimmons, all stoppages. Checky, Ryan. Who am I forgetting? Put him up. Who's number 3?
Hey, can you do us a favor in the future, Ray?
Yes.
When you guys win fights, before you come on the show, can you fucking write their names down on a piece of paper?
I did write them down. Hold on a second. Oh,
There's so many wins, John.
Edwin got a win, too. Edwin Chung. Yeah, so we had 4 guys. Check, Edwin, Tom, and Ryan all did great.
Did you call him Edward Chung? It says Edwin Jung there.
Edwin
Jung. I mean, show the man a modicum of respect,
Okay,
Raymond.
but basically in this place, I call anybody whatever the fuck I want.
Right, that's right. I mean,
That-
your
is that
name-
what
you.
That's the
fair.
kind of talk you want.
You know what I'm going to do after the show? I'm going to follow Edwin Jung on Instagram, and I'm going to congratulate him.
Beautiful.
That's what I'm going to
You know,
do.
he would
Cody
appreciate
just wrote in the chat, the late Ray Longo joins us. I didn't say that, did I? Did I say the late Ray? No, I didn't.
Wait, that doesn't sound good. Please
No,
don't say
no,
that.
Ray's
That
alive. He's
doesn't-
alive
that's,
and well.
No, I just got. I said the great. The great. Oh, all right. He was saying because you looked down with the light like you were in heaven. All right.
Oh shoot! Oh man, this is getting complicated already.
Dark.
Hey,
So,
I was listening to what you guys were saying though, but I love these fights for the fact that what Kenny was saying, guys that were on kind of a roller coaster ride, they win, they lose. Whittaker, just a stud, willing to go back in 2-1. So I just, those are the guys you like, and those are the guys I'm sure the UFC likes for a reason. But it's not easy to get those wins like Whittaker's getting after you lost, because even mentally you lose the title and you lose to Adesanya a bunch of times. But to hang in there and to have a performance like that, I think was unbelievable. And the same thing with Vulcan, man. What a great fight against a guy who's, he's either gonna knock you out with something crazy or he needs fundamentals, Kenny. You know what I mean? He just doesn't seem to embrace anything but craziness. You know what I mean? And it just only lasts so long. And I think that's what you're seeing. But, Vulcan just the way his hands were, I mean, just picked him apart very easily. Man, crazy. So again, a guy that's been up and down, like you say, Kenny, I think those are the guys that really impress me because I know what it's like. You go on a slide, you lose a couple of fights, or it's a big fight you lose. It's hard to mentally stay in that game. And these two guys, that night, that was my takeaway, man. I loved it. I loved every second of both of those fights.
And Ray, I think you nailed it there, man. And the big problem with, if we can nerd out on MMA a little bit here, it's the fundamentals are boring and they're not sexy. People want, hey coach, give me that little hack, give me that cool looking move. Let me, just hit the pads instead of doing footwork for 2 hours by yourself in front of the mirror. Like, these are things that people don't. You got to fall in love with the boring shit that nobody wants to do, because it takes longer to be good at. You can, if I add in a spinning back kick and I throw it in a fight, it looks like I'm getting better all of a sudden. Where when you're working the fundamentals, it takes longer to get good at that, and to see the results takes longer as well. And people just don't want to put in that work. So I agree with you. Whereas Oezdemir, you could see he is putting in the fundamentals. He is working those foundational skills. That's the stuff that you're going to have forever. So anyways, I thought that was a great point.
No, Kenny, I absolutely love it. And the other thing is too, when, you could get a guy at the beginning, but then when a guy gets a couple of those knockouts, then it's hard to go backwards and do the basics because you're used to that dynamic bullshit. And then the other stuff seems just boring. Like, I'll get away with this. I'll get away with that. It doesn't work like that.
Yep.
And I think he's a really perfect example of that. Seems like a nice guy, always a bit wacky, but it looks like he takes that into the octagon with him. And it's not about winning or losing. It's about, something else, man. Crazy. But, and you could see what, how do you pronounce his last name again?
Oezdemir.
I mean, fundamentally, he always had it, but now that's what I'm saying. For him to be on that roller coaster ride and to come back with a big win against a very dangerous guy, if you fight him the wrong way, I think he deserves a big fight.
I agree. So it sounds like you were watching us live on YouTube before you came on. Is that accurate?
Were
you in the back room? You said you had heard Kenny talking about Robert Whittaker. Were you just in the back
room?
Oh,
no. I came in on Odessa. I didn't come in on the Whittaker thing.
Okay. All right. Just making sure.
What was the Whittaker thing?
Well, no. I thought you had mentioned Whittaker, but I was just going to tell you that you can come on the show anytime you want. From the top of the show, you have an open invitation. In terms of what Kenny was saying in martial arts, right? Carla Esparza got tuned up by Joanna Jędrzejczyk in 2015, right?
Yeah, very bad.
Wrestling maintenance, okay? In 2019, she begins a 5-fight winning streak, and then she beats Rose Namajunas to become a 2-time UFC strawweight champion. And all we seemingly talk about with her is wrestling maintenance, right? And so you can maybe scoff at that second win over Rose to win the title for a second time. And maybe one day she goes into the UFC Hall of Fame. She certainly should. Maybe it's not all that pretty, but she's been willing for years and years and years to do the stuff in training that nobody fucking wants to do, you know?
Yep.
100%.
That's it. All right. By the way, we were able to give Mick Maynard the Ray Longo Minute t-shirt. Did you see that?
And you know what? I'm going to say, look, I apologize. Somebody sent me the picture again. Mick, he did message me on Instagram, but I'm really not looking. I don't really get on there. And then by the time I accepted it, it disappeared. So I'd love to see it again, Mick, but thank you very much. I appreciate it. And thank you, John, for carrying the shirt.
You're welcome and paying for it. You're welcome. Can you do me a favor, though? Can you do me a favor? What's so funny?
Well, you had to throw in the pay and pay for
it. It's the best.
You don't know that's funny.
For it, you know? No, it's free.
Yeah.
John Anik Enterprise is fucking paying for that shit. Thank Jason.
I thought we were a big operation. Now we're making over $30.
We're getting it.
Corporation, Kenny. Oh,
sorry about the delay on your quarterly payment. You can blame DraftKings.
Oh, wow.
Non-expeditious nature.
Is there anybody I could talk to over there?
So do me a favor, though. And I say this
Yeah.
with all sincerity. Send Mick Maynard a direct message and say thanks for the support, right? Because he asked for that T-shirt, right? It was a request. And then maybe just be like, dude, let's get Pumi Nakuda in the UFC.
Come on. I mean,
no, why? Is that stepping out of your lane?
No. I've been there 10 times already.
You've messaged him privately or talked to him about it?
No, I've talked to him. I like to talk. The messaging thing is horrible to me.
All right. Well, can I get involved? I mean, what are we doing? Is Pumi going to have to take another fight? I mean, we're not doing Dana White's Contender Series, are we?
I think that would be great. I mean, there was a guy, I think he wanted him to fight that Pumi didn't fight. Make that on the Contender Series.
All right.
There's only one way to find out. You got to give a guy a shot, John. I mean, either way. I mean, he definitely warrants a shot. Whether you think he's boring or not boring, he finished his last 2 out of 3. I mean,
yeah,
I don't know, man. Give him a goal. Is it 3 more fights? Is it 1 more fight? You know, because now he has gotten finishes. So let's take that off the table. That doesn't seem to be the thing. So I don't know. I think he'd be a breath of fresh air in that division. Unless you want to see guys fight each other 18 times in a row, then we could do that.
No, and he's undefeated. I really don't understand what the disconnect is. And there have been less than 10 times in all my years with the UFC that I have ever stepped out of my lane, so to speak, to approach a matchmaker about a fighter. I remember one time I wore a Ben Askren t-shirt to a matchmaker meeting. Kenny remembers this. So we used to have matchmaker meetings with Joe Silva and Sean Shelby before the fights. And I wore a funky Ben Askren yellow t-shirt to the fighter meeting or the matchmaker meeting because I wanted Joe to sign Ben. And Joe Silva, who is my dear friend to this day, was like, "What the fuck are you doing wearing a Ben Askren t-shirt here? You're hotel. Like, go fucking change your shirt, you little fuck." All right. And I'm like, "You're smaller than me."
I think that's a guy you could take. And if you want to do one of those charity boxing fights, that's the guy we're putting in there with you.
Well, he has an octagon in his basement and actually spars. But I think from a cardiovascular and grappling standpoint, I might be able to get past Joe. But that's not a bad idea.
Can we get some footage of sparring? I'd love to see it.
Supposedly he tunes up MMA manager Brian Butler, but I don't have that on good authority. All right. I've got a couple other things that I want to get into on this UFC Fight Night, some of which we have touched on, some of which we have not. So I don't know if you have anything for us on the heavyweights and Alexander Volkov and Sergey Pavlovich, and then getting into it after the fight and a really good performance for Volkov, maybe Gastelum and D-Rod with the weight stuff. Anything on those two main card situations before we get to the prelims?
Sergey, put him back into grammar school for fight IQ. You got one way of winning the fight, and with a minute left, he's trying to take the guy down. Like now he's a jiu-jitsu expert. Like, can he explain that to me? Please explain that to me, Kenny. You got one way to win. One way at that point, and it wasn't taking the guy down.
No.
I don't know. So
that was a head scratcher.
He's got to go back to Fight School 101 and really get like some IQ points raised there. And Gastelum, another guy with the roller coaster type thing, career. But the problem is you got to make the weight. So that's just such a bad look for a guy that's been around that long. I don't know, but he did what he was supposed to do, but it gets overshadowed by his, inconsistency to make the weight.
Shara Bullet Magomedov over Antonio Trocoli. The finish comes by TKO at the 227 mark of round 3. Shout out to Antonio Broccoli Trocoli, by the way. That should be his nickname. I think if I'm Antonio Trocoli, and I'm trying to resonate with the fan base, right, as maybe a fringe UFC fighter right now, growing out my hair, I'm fucking dyeing it green, and I'm Antonio Broccoli Trocoli, and people are going to give a shit. This kid arrived in Saudi Arabia at 1 a.m. He's a massive middleweight. 1 a.m. Friday and made the weight, right?
Right.
Total respect. But the notion that he was going to be able to be competitive on this night after that situation, I thought was super ambitious. There was a situation, obviously, where he was close to a takedown, and Mark Goddard did not give him the takedown after an egregious fence grab by Shara Bullet. But Kenny, I guess we'll start with you. Anything on Shara Bullet? He's a fun striker to watch. Certainly he's going to have to work on his wrestling defense. But what were your thoughts on Shara Bullet and sort of the elements to that main card fight?
Yeah, well, it's never easy to fight a guy who's that tall, that long. Trocoli, I actually thought he landed a very good right hand in round 1 that seemed to stun the Bullet. But yeah, I agree with you on the wrestling. Why? Well, first of all, people are going to realize you got to take the guy down, right? Number one. But I also think it's going to allow him to throw more volume during the rounds. I think that's why we're seeing that kind of lack of volume or perhaps lack of confidence, especially early on in the fight. And because of that, he's a little hesitant, doesn't want to be taken down. So I think having that wrestling confidence, that ability to defend takedowns, know what range he's going to be capable at, all that stuff is going to allow him to be that much more dangerous of a striker. So couldn't agree with you more there. And he's still learning. It's one thing to go out there and win these fights and be exciting outside of the UFC. It's a completely different animal to do that inside the UFC against the best fighters in the world. So I do think he's got a lot of potential. There was a lot of hype on him heading into the UFC. Not sure he's kind of proven that he deserved that hype quite yet, but he does have potential. He is a good striker, just needs to shore some things up when it comes to the grappling skills.
Yeah. And I say, John, we dye his hair white and call him Chocolate.
Ooh, there you go.
So fingernails on the blackboard.
Ray, Dana said after the fight, he was asked about the viability of Shara Bullet fighting in the United States of America, and he said that we probably can't fight him there, so we'll probably keep him over there. I mean, I don't even know. I have no inside information as to whether or not this man can see out of both of his eyes or if that is just a visual thing, but it seems as though there are some definite hurdles in terms of getting Shara Bullet to the United States, and I think that is going to be preventative when it comes to him getting big fights. I'd like to move on to Jared Gordon if I could against Nasrat Haqparast. Can I do that? So, gosh, I mean, when you look at Jared Gordon's body of work, he just doesn't have the wins to show for how he's performed, in my opinion. Nasrat Haqparast gets it done by split decision. It was a close fight, but yet felt like all 3 rounds, Raymond, were pretty easy to score. I thought Jared won this fight 29-28. And, Ken Flo wasn't the only guy with a big ticket on Jared Gordon in the plus 250 range, which I guess is neither here nor there. But what were your thoughts on the featured prelim at 155 pounds, Raymond?
Look, I'm in agreement with you 100%. I thought Jared Gordon won that fight. Yes, it was a close fight, but he was always going forward. He had him rocked, I think, 1 or 2 times. Definitely, I would think, did the more damage based on what I was looking at. Again, competitive, close fight, but I'm going with you. Easy to score. Jared Gordon gets that win, but, maybe you don't fight a guy from Morocco and Saudi Arabia. That's the only thing I could think of. Because I thought he won the fight.
Yeah, there were some scorecards. I also thought that with respect to Rinat Fakhretdinov, that Nicholas Dalby deserved to win that fight, and he was on the wrong end of a split. Kenny, what do you have for us on Jared Gordon and Nasrat Haqparast, of course, being cornered by your good friend Faraz Sahabi?
Yeah, listen, I think Haqparast is a good kid. I thought he fought really well, but he lost the fight. I thought Gordon was landing the more effective strikes. And kind of how do you know that? A lot of people go with volume and things like that. Well, if you're landing strikes and you're backing up the other guy because of those strikes, and if you're getting strikes landed on you, but you continue to move forward, it means that you're landing the more effective strikes. If you're hitting me and I continue to walk forward and it's not doing anything to me, then you can kind of throw those out if I'm throwing shots and backing you up. And that's really the story of this fight. I thought Haqparast probably won round 1. Even that was very close. You could have an argument for Gordon winning that as well, but I thought it was pretty clear. That's a 29-28 for Gordon, potentially a 30-27 for Gordon. He was, again, I don't want to talk about the takedowns and the octagon control, because that's all null and void. We didn't even have to get there because he was the more effective striker.
Yeah,
so I don't understand how you saw that. Maybe Gordon could have shaved his mustache. That might have helped him a little bit. But I don't know, man. I don't understand what happened there. That was it'd be a little aggressive for me to say robbery, right? But it's a clear win for Gordon, and you gotta feel bad for that guy because he's been so close before. We all know about the Paddy Pimblett fight, but just for him to be back in the UFC with everything he's dealt with, man, he's trying his hardest, all that stuff, and he comes up short on something like that. It sucks. It sucks. And I hope this doesn't deter him or take away any passion from him or work ethic, because he won that fight. He really did.
I'm afraid it might. I got into it with him extensively over text message after the fact, and the conversation sort of ended, Ray, with him saying, I just don't know what to do, man. I
don't want to hear that, man.
Well, he's winless. He's got 1 win in his last 4, the no contest with Bobby Green. But I look at 2 split decisions. And actually, I think the Paddy Pimblett fight was unanimous, remarkably. But the Paddy Pimblett fight is a win, and the Nasrat Haqparast fight, with respect, is a win. And so instead of being unbeaten in his last 4 with 3 wins and a no contest, he has this, just situation in his career where he doesn't know what to do, juxtaposed against Nasrat Haqparast, who's won 4 in a row. So, and at lightweight, Kenny, it's like there's just no margin for error. And then he doesn't get the bonus, because Shar Bullet gets the bonus, right? It was Whittaker, it was Shar Bullet, it was Volkan Oezdemir, and then the very deserving Felipe Lima. But it's like when it rains, it fucking pours for Jared Gordon. And, I don't know what the kid has to do. I think I might have to send him a bonus.
Can I get my quarterly check first? Before you start giving away money we don't have.
Yeah.
I'll tell you what, though, send them a shirt on me. Can you do that?
I will. I don't know if he wants
that'll make him jump off the bridge as quick as possible.
Do you think he wants the Ray Longo Minute design, or maybe the Ken Flo Wolverine design?
He's from Astoria. Give him the Mafia shirt.
That's right.
I understand that better. But man, what a nice guy too, man. It sucks when they do this, because just like, again, and I don't like to hear. I mean, he's a good kid, and I think he will bounce back from that. But it's almost like he's put in there for those type of decisions. I don't know why. I don't even know what I'm saying. But you knew Pimblett was going to get the call because that's who everybody's leaning towards. He 100% won that fight, and I think they just look at him as that guy that's. I don't know. It's shitty, though, man. It really is shitty. And to hear him say that, I don't know what I'm going to do. That breaks my heart because, man, that guy gives it his all every fucking time he goes in there. And to come up short like that, how many times can you it's like you keep beating somebody down, man. It's only a matter of time till they're down. You know what I mean? And I don't know.
Well, Haqparast was competitive, and he's put in a lot of hard work in his own right, but I just don't think he deserved to win this fight. And poor Jared, I think, with a broken orbital, if I'm not mistaken, and going to have to deal with some recovery and what was probably a hellish flight home for him. But one thing I'll say in closing on Jared Gordon, he had the huge knockout of Madison Square Garden against Marco Madsen. And then our whole fighter meeting, Kenny, was about getting a finish here, right? Which he was pursuant of the whole fight, because at 155 pounds, you got to make a statement, right? And he just was all offense on this night and backed up everything he said in the fighter meeting. And so maybe the blow would have been softened a little bit if you get the bonus, and he doesn't even get that. So I'm hoping that Jared Gordon can recover and get a big fight, and we'll see what they do with Haqparast, who has won 4 in a row. Go ahead, Ray.
No, I was going to say, and Kenny's right, man. The guy went forward whatever the other guy was doing definitely didn't deter him. I think it was even more than that. He did buckle Nasserat a couple of times.
He
No,
did.
like, you know what I'm saying? Like, what else do you want from the guy? Like, it looked like there were a couple of times he was on the verge where he could have finished the fight, and he was chasing him around. So I don't know, man. My heart goes out to that guy, and I hope somebody does the right thing eventually.
All right, last thing on the UFC fight night, and then we'll get some thoughts from Ray on UFC 303 in our final 5 minutes. Felipe Lima, who is a natural bantamweight, moves up to featherweight on short notice and beats Mohamed Naimov by rear naked choke in round 3. He's the 4th and final bonus winner. What a kid. What a story. Families in Manaus. Tried to get to the United States to train. Couldn't get there, so he goes to All Stars in Sweden, aligns with Andreas Michael and Khamzat Chimaev, and everybody else, has been UFC ready, Ken Flo, for years, right? Gets this short notice opportunity, makes the most of it. Ray, I don't know if you saw the Felipe Lima fight, but this kid, I think, is the real deal. I'm like,
yeah,
that's okay. No, that's okay.
He
We're
looked
actually
good,
watching that.
Yeah, was it the first 2 fights? I think that's the fights I missed. Was it up in the beginning?
Yeah,
it was like the
yeah.
It was actually right before the featured prelim, but Kenny saw it. It was the 5th prelim, actually. Ken Flo, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I thought, his opponent was tough. He was really good. He was looking for takedowns. He was a good striker himself. But I thought Lima was throwing some really dynamic striking combinations. He looked really good, kept at it. With the high volume, was staying, seemed like he was still in really good shape, keeping the pressure on, and then ended up getting the finish with the rear naked choke, man. And it was that one opportunity, and that's what you're looking for at the elite level. It's like, give me that one shot, and if I get that one shot, I'm going to finish the deal. That's exactly what he did. He showed that he's high level, and he did it against another guy who I thought was a really good fighter. So,
yes,
tremendous performance, man.
Hey, Ray, when's your next haircut?
Soon. How's it look? Why you getting? Man,
Not
it
looks okay. It looks okay.
Let me just put some grease in there.
All right. Before we get you out of here, Alex Pereira is defending his light heavyweight championship this weekend. Now, I can't speak to Yuri Prochazka's relative health or what type of training scenario he had, but all indications are that Alex Pereira, while working out and doing seminars and stuff, was not in training camp, was in Australia, might be dealing with a broken toe or two. Whether it matters or not in the matchup, I don't know. But what are your thoughts on this light heavyweight championship this weekend? And forced to make a pick, are you going with the favorite Alex Pereira or the underdog Yuri Prochazka?
Yeah, I think basically everything you said, broken toe, seminars, I think because he's fought him before, there's a familiarity there that, he's willing to jump in there maybe a little bit, early if he had to, which he does. I'm going to go with Alex. I love the guy. I love everything about him. I love his walkout. I love his punching power from a short distance. This whole thing is good, man. Again, another guy stepping up, taking advantage, making the money, and, it's a calculated risk. And I think Yuri's, a very talented guy, obviously spiritual with the martial arts and stuff, but and he's really good. He's really, really good. But I think there's it's almost like that Johnny Walker thing going on where his basics aren't there, but he's so dynamic and young, and what he has that Johnny Walker doesn't have is up here. I mean, he believes, that spirituality for some guys, and he's one of them, really works. So yeah, he has obviously a shot of winning the fight, but in a long, drawn-out fight, I think Alex gets the fight done. And I mean, I'm just saying, like, the longer it goes on, he'll be able to see more openings, I believe. And the other guy, once you do crazy stuff, but you slow down a little bit, it leaves you open a little more. But I love Yuri. I like him. I like his the whole thing, the samurai thing, the whole bit. But I'm going with Alex, man, because that guy he keeps he keeps the part going, man. He's not messing around. He's always in character, and I don't even know if it is a character, but that's a scary son of a bitch, that guy.
Can you please just stop calling him Alex?
What's his name?
I mean, what the fuck is Alex, bro? Alex, you go even Alex if you want, but Alex much better than
John.
Alex.
Than
This thing.
Man. Hey, Ray.
I'm really
I
bad.
don't let a lot of things go, like the Minutemen,
No, No, I
to be
know.
all
I'm
over
bad
me,
with
but like I guarantee
pronunciation.
you're not the only fucking Anik and Florian podcast listener who heard Alex the third time and was like, "Is Anik gonna fucking correct him?" Go ahead.
Oh my God. All right, we got another barn burner. We got Diego Lopez taking on Brian Ortega, man. Ortega, obviously, he's been around for a long time. He has proven his toughness time and time again, but Lopez, man, seems to be streaking. He's dangerous as hell everywhere. How do you see this one going down?
I'm gonna go with Lopez.
Yeah.
You guys killing me on the series.
Lopez
I'm
is good.
going with Diego. I think it's his time. He's a young kid. He's only getting better and better. Even if he loses, it's going to be a great growing experience for his future. But I mean, the fact that Ortega was talking about moving up to 55 means that he's not happy about 45 either. So I don't know. I look, Ortega's tough, and I don't think he was doing good against Yair, but he got the job done. But I think with this kid, but again, Yair is that another guy, Kenny, who's dynamic, but if he just held to a game plan, I think I don't even know if the guy would lose if they could really structure him a nice game plan. But I think Lopes is on the up and up, and it's his time, and I think he gets the job done. What are the odds on that fight?
Diego Lopez is favored, albeit slightly, minus 140 or so.
All right. No, he is favored, though. Yeah, I'm going with Diego on that, man. I think, and I love Ortega, but I think he gets the job done.
All right, at Ray Longo MMA on X. Don't bother with him on Instagram. His chief account got hacked, and the other one, is what it is.
Still acting like an asshole, that guy.
Hey, have a great day and a better evening. We appreciate the time. And see, Ray can take it, guys. Ray and I love to knock each other's balls. He can take it.
I don't even. What am I taking?
You're the chief fucking ball knocker on this show anyway, you know?
I got to get my ball busting chops back up to where they should be. I've been light lately. Yeah, we're going to go crazy next week.
Hey,
bring it, Ray.
Have a great day there at Longo's MMA. And unless you got anything else, we'll talk to you next Monday.
I have a great day when I see you two guys first thing in the morning. This is what I'm talking about.
We love you.
I'll see you. Take it easy.
Good, dude.
My man. Guy leads the league in handsome. Raymond Longo every week here on the Anik and Florian podcast. And you may have heard Ray reference some quotes from Brian Ortega that can be accessed on MMA Junkie. I really liked these quotes from Ortega. Now, he acknowledged that they're just kind of stepping in here. And certainly, I think if you're looking at it from afar without any inside knowledge, you feel like Diego Lopez is training all the goddamn fucking time. And he's just an absolute animal. And maybe Brian Ortega was looking at a date in September, Noche UFC. He mentioned that there was an opponent bandied about at 155 pounds. So Ortega was maybe working towards moving up to lightweight, and it is instead taking this unique opportunity. And it's exciting to Brian. It's exciting to hear him talk about the nature of this matchup and accepting it on short notice against this guy who's all the rage. But I do like hearing Ortega sort of talk about 55 because it's not going to be anytime soon for him getting a featherweight championship opportunity, even if he does beat Diego Lopez this weekend.
No, totally. I think it shows excellent self-awareness. He understands what's happening in the division. And really, that's the way it's going to play out, right? I mean, Topuria is the champ right now. It's going to be against Holloway. And if it's not Holloway, right, something happens with that. Volk's stepping in the second fight. So that pushes Ortega back, even if he gets a very impressive win here. Unless something happens where one of those guys get injured or something like that, like you always want to stay ready and busy, but Ortega has the right diagnosis here. But you wonder, does he realize that this is still a very important fight? Like Lopez is hungry. A win over Ortega is a big deal. So he better come in here very well prepared, because Lopez is no joke. And I think that fight, there's no other way, but it's going to deliver a tremendous amount of action. There's no question about it.
A huge addition to UFC 303, and it is coming up this weekend, Diego Lopez and Brian Ortega. All right. We are going to be back either tomorrow or Wednesday with a full preview of UFC 303. We'll get Kemflo's thoughts on Conor McGregor, the toe injury, and all of that when Mike Conor return. If you want to support the program and the One More Sleep movement, you can go to johnanik.com, kennyflorian.com as well for our entire Anik and Florian podcast merchandise store, including that aforementioned Wolverine design. And we will be back with you. It might be Tuesday, might be Wednesday, but Brian Petrie will be alongside. I'll be live in the penthouse. It actually will be live to tape, but we'll have a full preview and predictions for UFC 303. And then, of course, back on Monday from the home studio to recap it all. Thank you all for tuning in. Thanks to Ray Longo. Our producer is Cody Merrill. Thanks to Big Ron Pellegrino for the hospitality. For Ken Flo, I'm John Anik. Thank you all for watching and listening live. We will talk to you in less than 48 hours. Until then, yo fucking